Hey, everybody, we've made it through another week here. It is Friday, February 21st. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Wanunu.
And I am Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. Jill, I don't know if you saw over on the Instagram feed, but one of the stories we were talking about that's probably not getting as much attention because of all the big news that's happening is that the creator of Nutella died. And what I found, very sad. He gave us
Nutella.
He gave us Nutella.
Which is more than I've done.
Francesco Rivella, Italian man, died at the age of 97. So lived a very long life. And my first reaction to that was, wait, the creator of Nutella lived till 97? He must have eaten a lot of Nutella in his life. And so the lesson I take away from that is the key to a long life, a lot of Nutella.
Indulging yourself.
But specifically Nutella, Alex and I were discussing it because she gets like a healthy version of Nutella, which is fine. It's chocolate spread. But it's not like Nutella. And so anyway, as we bring you the news here, a piece of news, the founder of Nutella is dead. R.I.P. Thank you for your contribution. But also thanks for the insight that you can live into your late 90s. With a lot of Nutella eating.
That is news you can use on a Friday.
Oh, totally. Some of you doing your grocery shopping for the weekend, go treat yourself with a little Nutella. By the way, this story not brought to you by Nutella, but I'm open to a sponsorship from them.
Now to the headlines. We'll start in the Middle East, where Hamas handed over the bodies of 4 dead hostages, including the youngest hostages, the Bibas children. Widespread condemnation over how they did it. In political news, the Senate confirms Kash Patel as Donald Trump's FBI director, and his education pick, Linda McMahon, clears committee and heads to the full Senate. Sticking with politics, Mitch McConnell announces his retirement from the Senate. We know DOGE is searching for wasteful spending. Turns out it isn't hard to find. We'll bring you some of the numbers.
Yeah, Wall Street Journal did an interesting analysis. One of the questions is DOGE looking for cuts in the right places?
And speaking of cuts, the IRS starts mass layoffs just in time for tax season.
Jill, I've heard from some people who are like, I got my return in early, worried this might be a thing.
New numbers on how many Americans identify as L.G.B.T.Q, according to a new survey. An interesting court case overseas finds that Birkenstocks, not works of art. We'll explain.
We'll explain what that means.
And the Backstreet Boys say that their Millennium 2.0 will finally explain the meaning of I Want It That Way.
Right, because the original song doesn't explain what it is or what that way is.
Is this a mystery? I've never even,
I didn't know this was a thing. We got into this. Jill, we actually addressed this briefly on an On This Day in History. Mark, one of our listeners, who really focuses on, you remember Mark. Some of you might remember Mark. He critiqued the fact that we're repetitive sometimes on this day in history. Mark might remember.
I don't remember, actually.
Well, we'll explain it today.
And it's Friday. Cheers to the freaking weekend, what we are watching, reading, and eating.
As Jill was just trying to make a reservation for this weekend before the podcast and was struggling. So we'll talk about that, and hopefully someone from that restaurant is listening.
What I may be eating.
What you might be eating, if you can get in.
Okay, let's start overseas. Hamas terrorists returned the remains of 4 slain Israelis, including Shiri Bibas and her 2 young children, Ariel and Kafir, more than 500 days after they were kidnapped from their home in Israel alive. Kafir was just 9 months old when he was taken hostage, the youngest of the 251 hostages. His brother Ariel was 4 years old. Also returned the body of Oded Lifshitz. The 83-year-old was a veteran journalist and a longtime defender of Palestinian rights. He was also taken hostage on October 7th, 2023. Now, before the bodies were returned to Israel, Hamas paraded their 4 black coffins in a celebratory transfer ceremony in Gaza. It was attended by hundreds of civilians. There was music and huge banners, including one that depicted Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as a vampire. Hamas blamed Israel and the United States for their deaths, although they provided no evidence. Again, hundreds of Palestinians were in the crowd watching, cheering, shouting victory. And that includes children and some of the prisoners that were let out of Israeli jails in exchange for the hostages as part of this ceasefire agreement, including a terrorist who was serving more than 40 life sentences in Israeli prison for murder. But Hamas had demanded that he be freed as part of the ceasefire. The United Nations rights chief condemned the handover ceremony, saying that, quote, under international law, any handover of the remains of deceased must comply with the prohibition of cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment. This was the first transfer of dead hostages since the ceasefire deal with Hamas went into effect last month.
Yeah, we should mention these ceremonies Hamas has been holding. They've been doing this for a while. They've been sending home hostages with gift bags, creating signing ceremonies, making them give speeches. This was the first one, as you mentioned, that dealt with the return of hostages who were dead and their caskets. And the Israelis, the West, Arab nations who had been negotiating this had asked of Hamas that they would do something more respectful than what unfolded yesterday in an open area in Gaza with music blasting, people applauding. And it turns out you have the Red Cross there, and they actually are the organization that they hand over both living hostages and the remains of hostages to. When the Red Cross saw this, reportedly, they refused to participate in this ceremony, spectacle, whatever you want to call it, that was unfolding there in Gaza. Now, eventually, they relented. There were some talks behind the scenes as things got delayed there. And eventually, the Red Cross agreed to participate in this. The Red Cross actually had to set up their own separator so they could check the caskets for bodies without civilians and people watching in an open area there as all of this was unfolding.
I did think that it was pretty interesting that the Red Cross seemingly objected to this ceremony, but they haven't objected when live hostages have come home in somewhat similar fashion as we saw a couple of weeks ago, absolutely emaciated and forced to be paraded on stage with people screaming in their faces.
Yeah, and like being forced to do interviews, including, one of the, hostages was asked what he was looking forward to and, said that I look forward to seeing my wife and children. And Hamas knew full well that they had murdered them in October of 2023 and never told him. So just terrible things unfolding there. But notable here, I guess, the Red Cross, the UN of all organizations, they've also not really condemned many things related to what's been happening there, putting out statements here, I guess a bridge too far here as far as they're concerned. Also on the caskets of those who were dead, they wrote date of arrest, October 7th, next to the victims' names, including the two young boys who apparently they mixed up the caskets and the labeling there. Just a lot of heartache in Israel here. They have had teams of Israeli forensics experts. They've had teams of Israeli forensics experts who went in to identify the 4 dead hostages. They actually had to scan the coffins. They actually had to scan the caskets for bombs, worried that they might have put stuff in there. There were reports from Israeli media that Hamas actually put in propaganda documents into the caskets saying, they will never give up the dream of Palestine and other things that they found inside there with the remains. Now, in exchange for the 4 Israelis that they returned, Israel freed a number of women and teens from Israeli prisons who had been detained during the war, a number of them without formal charges. But given what unfolded in Gaza yesterday, the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, gave a speech last night vowing revenge for both the killing of the kids and the treatment of their remains. He actually quoted a Bible passage, Psalm 94, which, among other things, the quote is, "O God of vengeance, O God, show vengeance." Other Israeli politicians across the political spectrum had similar remarks here, having had to watch what unfolded there. And it comes, Jill, as there's still dozens of hostages being held in Gaza.
Right. Israel and Hamas are now in the final weeks of the first phase of the 42-day ceasefire. It started in late January. The two sides will begin indirect negotiations on the second phase of the deal this week. There have been some delays. Now, 6 living hostages are expected to be released Saturday. So far, 19 living hostages have been released.
As part of this phase of the deal, we also expect several more remains of hostages who have been killed since being taken alive in Israel back in October of 2023. In total, Hamas still has about 60 more male hostages. Around half of them are believed to still be alive here. A number of them soldiers. And so Hamas is going to be asking for a number of top leaders in the group there. They typically ask for much more when it comes to active Israeli soldiers or young men who can serve in the military as part of these deals that they try to make. Jill, you mentioned that top terrorist who was released recently and happened to sit in the front row as a guest of honor at the ceremony yesterday. He was actually supposed to be deported to Egypt. The deal here is that a number of these individuals who are in Israeli prison for murder or multiple murders, in the case of this individual, are supposed to be deported and go not live in Gaza anymore. Egypt right now is refusing to take in any more people because they've taken in a number of these prisoners who were released because there's an agreement that they don't stay in Egypt. Egypt is very worried about instability there and extremism. They're supposed to go to yet another country, Turkey, Algeria, Pakistan, among the countries that preliminarily have agreed to take in some of these former Hamas leaders and fighters, but they haven't actually taken any in. So Egypt's like, no, we're not taking any of these folks in either right now. So there's a holdup with that process. And it comes, Jill, as we continue to watch a big meeting today in the Middle East, a number of Arab countries, including Egypt, as we mentioned yesterday, discussing the future of Gaza. So we'll watch for headlines there. Stay tuned for the newsletter, which we should mention. The newsletter now comes out in the afternoon, so there will be a Friday afternoon edition of the Mo newsletter. Make sure to sign up for that over at mo.news, as well as on the Instagram feed today and over on Mo News Premium this weekend.
Now to politics here in the United States. The Senate confirmed Kash Patel is the next FBI director. That vote, 51-49. Two Republican senators, Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, joined all Democrats in opposing Patel's nomination. Notably, Republican Senator Mitch McConnell did not vote against the nomination. He has opposed some of Donald Trump's other picks. Collins said the FBI director needs to be decidedly apolitical. She said Patel's, quote, time over the past 4 years has been characterized by high profile and aggressive political activity. Democrats have warned that Patel will use the position to seek retribution against Trump's perceived political enemies. Despite those concerns, Senate Majority Leader John Thune defended Patel, saying that he would eliminate political bias within the FBI. Most Republicans have really come around when it comes to Patel.
Yeah. Back in the first term, he was persona non grata. Notable quote from Trump's former Attorney General, Bill Barr, who was effectively his last confirmed Attorney General. Trump tried to get Patel into the first administration. Bill Barr notably said, "over my dead body." He was controversial even among pretty conservative members of the party due to some of his extreme beliefs, issues with his personality, a whole variety of things. And so this time around, Trump has much more of a mandate. Republicans have fallen in line here. And it's notable when it comes to FBI director. Why? It's a 10-year term. The FBI director, especially coming out of the Nixon administration, was meant to be a non-political position that would serve 10 years, so not in line with presidential terms there. The last FBI director, Chris Wray, was actually appointed by Donald Trump after he fired Jim Comey, but he fell out of favor, in particular, during the last couple of years when he was being investigated, when Trump was being investigated by the FBI. So he made a point of pushing Wray out, even though he had a few years left in his 10-year term, putting Patel in. Patel, very much a loyalist, golfs with Trump, very close to Trump here. And so the concern among Democrats and some Republicans in the beginning here was that he would make the position way more political than they want it to be. They want a separation between law enforcement and the president. And so here's Patel. He's the new FBI director. What to expect here? He's promised a major overhaul of the agency. Back in 2022, he published a list of dozens of people he suggested should be investigated within the FBI. Investigate the people inside the FBI. He's joked about turning the FBI headquarters into a museum. Expect a lot of headlines here from Patel and the FBI. I've gotten notes from some folks inside the agency who are very concerned about what may happen next, especially when it comes to various investigations and law enforcement. When it comes to investigating Republicans or people close to Trump there, how much potential political intervention will be involved there. Nonetheless, Trump wants a close hold here on the FBI. And so we will watch to see what takes place. There's been a lot of speculation here, but Kash Patel, now officially the new FBI director, note that the CIA director, the new CIA director, joked on X yesterday, it's time for him to get to work, and published a photo of them golfing together. So we will see what goes on with Patel and his attempt to what he says is going to be taking out bias inside the FBI.
In other political news, Linda McMahon, President Trump's pick for Education Secretary, passed the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, otherwise known as the HELP Committee, on Thursday. So now her confirmation goes to the full Senate, and she is expected to be easily approved.
We should mention she will be approved despite very little experience in the education world. She was the head of the Small Business Administration during the first Trump term. You might know her as the wife of Vince McMahon. She was a WWE, a wrestling executive, for many, many years. And Trump has said that one of his objectives for Linda McMahon is to basically eliminate her own job. He has talked about eliminating the Department of Education or many of its roles. And so she's the new Secretary of Education. And what Trump has said is that there's a chance here, and again, it would have to go through congressional approval. We'll see what comes of it, but that ultimately that she does such a great job that her job won't exist anymore.
So would you take a job if your new boss was like, okay, so the point of this job is to eliminate your job?
Well, if I get another, if they promise me another job afterwards, and so maybe it's like, do this, and then I'll have something else for you. And Jill, we should note, there's a lot of complicating factors here. The Department of Education handles a lot of different things. This has been talked about for 40 plus years. Will they take an approach here that is similar to what they did at USAID or some of these agencies where they don't go through Congress, but they effectively just fire a lot of people internally? Imagine this is another agency where you're going to see a lot of headlines. You're going to see attempts to cut things. You're going to see lawsuits as Trump really tries to bring in people who are very loyal to him, who will be looking to remake the agencies and cabinet departments.
Sticking with news from Washington, Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky says that he will not run for re-election next year.
Yeah. Headline not altogether surprising out of Washington, given McConnell's health of late. He's taken multiple falls lately. He has been using a wheelchair. He turned 83 yesterday, which actually is 10 years younger than some people in the Senate. Chuck Grassley's in his 90s, still running committees. But McConnell's health has taken a turn here. But he was a long-running leader, Republican leader, got a lot of things done on behalf of his party, including push through all three of Trump's Supreme Court nominees in the first term. But those two have had a falling out. They do not like each other. And so you've seen McConnell recently, as we've been joking, in his Maverick era, voting against the president, one of the few Republicans willing to buck the president here. Here's a bit of Mitch McConnell yesterday on the floor.
Representing our Commonwealth has been the honor of a lifetime. I will not seek this honor an eighth time. My current term in the Senate will be my last.
So McConnell already no longer the Republican leader, and it looks like just now going to be a senator through 2026. Of course, Kentucky, a very red state. So you can imagine there will be an election in 2026, but Republicans favored to hold on to that seat.
Time for the speed read from the Wall Street Journal. DOGE is searching for wasteful spending. It isn't hard to find. The federal government misspends at least $100 billion each year out of its multi-trillion-dollar budget. Identifying the wasteful outlays isn't the hardest part. It's actually doing something about it. A Wall Street Journal analysis of agencies' self-identified improper payments in 2024 shows $149 billion in wasteful spending. That's about 2% of the government's roughly $7 trillion budget last fiscal year. The biggest culprit by far is the Department of Health and Human Services, which isn't surprising since they handle about $2 trillion of the annual budget with some of the big programs like Medicare and Medicaid. Every year, agency reports posted online document billions in improper payments. Now, this is across the board for all the government departments and includes fraud, but also underpayments, duplicate payments, payments to ineligible recipients or for ineligible goods or services. Once the improper payments are made, the government can try to get some of the money back, but it isn't always easy. Now, those payments surged during the pandemic as relief programs expanded with weak fraud protections in place.
So no major surprise here. This won't come as a surprise to Democrats or Republicans that with the $7 trillion in annual spending, there's a lot of waste. And that's been one of the agenda items here for DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, the Elon Musk initiative in there. They claim right now, they have a website going, that they have saved $55 billion with a B through most of through this week, through what they call fraud detection, contract renegotiations, grant cancellations, asset sales, workforce cuts, and regulatory changes. About 20% of the action coming from job cuts. Now, some of those are on hold due to various court cases. And verifying some of DOGE's claims difficult, since they don't always put out evidence of everything that they do, and they've only disclosed a portion of some of the contracts there. And of course, there are the legal moves. Again, some of their stuff is blocked. Nonetheless, their major thing here has been firing government workers, which it turns out if you look at the numbers, and I think the Journal did a good job of this, and we should note the Wall Street Journal has a conservative slant, is sympathetic to what DOGE is up to, but is saying they might be barking up the wrong tree here if they're really trying to find cuts, because ultimately some of the fraud laid out in some of these larger agencies is not what they're focused on, mispayments, overpayments. They're really focused on cutting some of these salaries, which again is a smidge here. Nonetheless, DOGE would say, we're still saving you billions of dollars by cutting these jobs from a number of the agencies out there. We're getting some new numbers, Jill, as Americans start to take in these headlines about DOGE, about the cuts. There's a Reuters poll, there's a Quinnipiac poll. Here are the numbers. 42% of Americans right now say they support DOGE. 53% of Republicans, 42% of Americans support DOGE, according to the Reuters poll. The majority, just over 50%, don't support DOGE. 53% of Republicans significantly in favor of DOGE. Democrats believe Musk and DOGE have too much power. So you see a partisan divide there. Basically, Republicans very in favor. Democrats very skeptical. 55% of voters in the Quinnipiac poll say that Musk wields excessive government influence. But then when you break that out by party, 3 out of 4 Republicans say his power is just right. So you're seeing this partisan divide here. It was notable this week. We posted a couple clips over on Instagram of Elon Musk and Donald Trump doing a joint interview. Very rare for a president to share the spotlight, especially President Trump, sitting next to Musk at times during answers where Musk is going on for a couple minutes. It does show the amount of power Musk has there, the amount of attention he has there. That's typical if you see the president and the VP together, but not typically a president and just somebody he has doing a job. So that was interesting to see. And it does show that as of right now, and this is something we've been watching this year, how long this relationship is going to last, that the Musk-Trump partnership appears to still be going strong, at least publicly.
Speaking of government cuts, from the Washington Post, the IRS on Thursday started to fire employees in a massive layoff ordered by the Trump administration. About 7,000 workers were expected to lose their jobs. That's about 7% of the roughly 100,000 person agency. Most of the cuts, about 5,000, came in the enforcement and collections section of the tax service. Many of the laid off employees were part of a recent hiring surge that was meant to improve service and update technology at the agency, which has seen its budget reduced repeatedly since 2010.
Yeah. Some of the systems at the IRS should go back to the 1970s. There's been talk for a while the IRS, nobody likes it, likes the IRS, right? But ultimately, if you're looking for your refund, you're looking for issues, mistakes the IRS makes, the argument that's been made now for a while is they're understaffed, that they have not seen an increase in staffing despite the population increase, despite major needs out there. But among the agencies they're taking an axe to with DOGE includes the IRS here amidst tax season. Some of you may have filed already. Of course, the deadline is April 15th. And so it's not clear what impact it'll have on those services. Critics say that losing those workers could jeopardize initiatives that the agency undertook here to improve collections, especially at a time when we're talking about being, trillions of dollars in debt here. And the IRS was looking to increase audits of wealthy people and stricter enforcement of rules on certain businesses here. So the enforcement division, those who are auditing, et cetera, looks like they're taking the brunt of this so far. And Jill, it comes, across the board here when it comes to all the various government agencies, including popular ones, unpopular ones. DOGE is going one by one. There's a big headline out of the Pentagon in the last couple of days that Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, has asked a number of divisions across the Pentagon to look for cuts. And now that's a significant thing because the DOD spends about $800 to $900 billion a year, nearly $1 trillion a year goes to our defense budget. So there's a lot of waste there. They haven't passed an audit. There's a lot they could potentially cut. Old weapon systems they're still building. A lot there. It is interesting so far, despite some of the pushback that they're getting, that they're gung-ho in the DOGE world, in the Republican world, in the Trump supporter world. I was struck this week by remarks Kevin O'Leary made. You might know him as the Wall Street investor who's on Shark Tank. He's worth a couple $100 million. He's pretty close to Donald Trump. Has had dinner with him. Is at Mar-a-Lago. Here's a bit of Kevin O'Leary when asked about cuts this week to the FAA and some of the other agencies, whether that's a bad look, bad optics right now, especially given some of the plane incidents. Here's Kevin O'Leary responding to questions about that.
The issue is they're not whacking enough. There's this concept in private equity when you get a bankrupt company and you go in there, you cut 20% more than your initial read. And then you find like a pool of mercury, the organization gels back together again. Always cut deeper, harder when there's fat and waste. The FAA, it's not the people. The code is cobalt. It's from the 60s. It needs CapEx put into it for the technology to be upgraded to make it safer. Fat like a chicken. All of these agencies are like big fat chickens dripping over barbecues of fat. This is the best barbecue I've ever seen, but I don't think it's happening fast enough. They're not cutting enough. Keep slashing, keep hacking while you have a 24-month mandate before the midterms. Cut, more cutting. Believe me, it's going to work out just great.
Moshe, I didn't know which way he was going to go on the cuts, but I guess from a business
it's
perspective,
very clear how he
it
feels.
makes sense.
Big, fat chicken, Jill. That's how he feels about the federal government. Now, he comes at it from a private equity perspective, reorganizing companies, taking them down to zero basing their budgets. The question is, does this work in government services? It handles issues. We just talked about, tax enforcement, health, the FAA, and plane security. Is that where you want to be whacking, cutting, big fat chickens? Now, potentially, sure, there's probably waste and over, too many people at all these places. But is this the way to go, through with it very quickly? Philosophically, some people also say that the government is not meant to be efficient. How efficient can a government be? Government is a backstop when certain things aren't handled by the private sector. So there's a larger philosophical argument here. There's an argument among those who are sympathetic to this, but wonder about the process here. But you see that, so far, there are people, who are saying, not only do I support DOGE, I think DOGE isn't going far enough.
From the New York Times, new record numbers for the number of Americans who identify as L.G.B.T.Q. Nearly 1 in 10 adults in the U.S. identifies as L.G.B.T.Q, according to a large analysis from Gallup out on Thursday. That's almost triple the number since Gallup first started to count in 2012, and it's up by 2/3 since 2020. The increases have been driven by young people and by bisexual women.
Yeah, so it was 7.6% in 2023. The latest numbers from last year show that 9.3% of Americans identify as LGBTQ. And then when you look at it generationally, nearly 1/4 of adults in Gen Z, so that's 18 to 27-year-olds, identify as LGBTQ. So just under 10% overall, but 1/4 of members of Gen Z. More than half of LGBTQ adults identify as bisexual. So that's the largest category there when it comes to Gen Z. Among the respondents, just about 1.5% identify as transgender. That is nearly double what we saw just back in 2020. The question, of course, is, ultimately, is this just comfort level being open in society? Now, the question here, as far as these numbers, is this just people feeling more open to tell pollsters about their status, whereas years ago there was much more stigma attached to it in society? So some interesting numbers there from Gallup.
To some business news from The Guardian, they may be the footwear of choice for Hollywood A-listers and pop stars, but Birkenstock sandals are not works of art. That is according to Germany's top court. The German sandal maker had sought a ruling that its footwear, known for its cork and latex soles, could be classified as art, and therefore they would be afforded strong copyright protections.
So that Birkenstock, I think of beauty, but not officially art there. They have for years transformed from unglamorous footwear to coveted fashion items. Apparently, the company wanted to stop 3 of its competitors from selling similar products here. But the German courts have ruled that Birkenstock sandals cannot be considered copyrighted works of applied art. For copyright protection to apply, there must be such a degree of design that the product displays some individuality. Oof, knife to the Birkenstock designer there.
And finally, from NBC News, when Backstreet Boys released Millennium in 1999, they shut down Times Square. And now, more than 25 years later, the Backstreet Boys are returning to the stage, a different stage, to pay homage to the very album that changed the course of their careers. The group announced earlier this month they're into the Millennium Sphere residency in Las Vegas this summer. They're also releasing Millennium 2.0, a 25-track deluxe album that includes remastered versions of their original songs, live recordings, demos, and an alternate version of I Want It That Way.
First of all, can we still call them Backstreet Boys, Jill? Half of them are in their 50s now.
Backstreet middle-aged men? Is that what we're going with? Doesn't have once ring to it though.
I think Boys to Men they've already taken that title, that group, right? They took it when they were boys. I guess they anticipated they would be singing for several decades, so they took Boys to Men. Backstreet Boys, I get the alliteration. I'm just saying, 25 years later, can you still call yourself a boy? That's one of the questions I would ask them if they can come on this podcast.
More important than what is I Want It That Way about. But turns out we're going to find out.
So that's also super important. Jill, I have to say that in sort of the 90s boy bands, I enjoyed Backstreet Boys more than NSYNC. I know that some people are more NSYNC people, but I remember that Millennium album. I remember blasting it in my pickup truck, the CD, when I got the CD back in whatever that was high school. I also played on the high school radio station. So as for the topic at hand, I Want It That Way. Am I your fire, your one desire? Yes, I know it's late, but I want it that way. He keeps talking in the song. They keep talking in the song about I want it that way, right? But they never explain what way they want. What are they even talking about? What do you want? What is it? And what is that way? And this has been acknowledged.
We could guess, right?
We could, but then if you actually read the lyrics, if you should listen to the lyrics, you're completely confused. Are they breaking up? Are they together? Are they talking about something in bed? Are they talking about something personal? Is there another man? Nobody knows. One of the issues you face with the Backstreet Boys is many of their songs were written by Swedish producers. It was English as a second language.
Right.
And so many of those lyrics, now you remember the On This Day in History. And so many of those lyrics were written by Swedes, and they made them sound great. They wanted the rhyming to work, right? They wanted the rhyming and the flow to work, but they actually make no sense. They make no sense. But the beat was so good that we didn't mind it in the 90s. When I'm listening to it in high school, I'm the song flows. I'm going to sing along with it. They want it that way. I want it this way. You want it that way. What is the way you want it? What is the dispute here? Never explained. So the group was asked about this on the Today Show. They say, listen, we've actually taken time to write a new version of I Want It That Way. And so they're going to premiere this as part of this new rollout, the performances in Vegas. So there's a new version of I Want It That Way. They say they don't actually like it as much, but they wanted the song to make sense. And so instead of Tell Me Why, the lyrics are being switched to versions of No Goodbyes and No More Lies, That Is Why. So as opposed to Keep Tell Me Why, it's No Goodbyes, No More Lies, That Is Why. So they're actually now in I Want It That Way explaining that the way they want it is without lies. And so there's going to be a logic to I Want It That Way. And I know this has been something that you've been struggling with for a while, Jill. It's just you think about it often.
I haven't been able to sleep, Moshe.
for 25 years.
Since high school. I don't even know what. It's been keeping me up.
Well, believe me, we're going to stay on this. And when the new version comes out, we'll play them side by side and we'll take a vote. You, the listener, will decide. Do you prefer the original I Want It That Way that makes no sense? Or do you like the logical one that might not rhyme as well?
The thing that I don't get, and I don't really want to harp on this anymore.
Oh, we've harped.
If we're saying that the song was written by Swedish songwriters, and so it didn't really have to make sense, then it's not like the Backstreet Boys wrote this and had a deeper meaning involved. Do you know, the songs it's not like Carly Simon with You're So Vain, where she wrote it and we've been wondering for years who the song was about.
She put thought towards it, yeah.
The Backstreet Boys didn't even write the song. So why are they trying to explain what it's... Get the Swedes here and let's talk to them.
Let's talk to them. They're why are you messing with a song that made you millions of dollars?
If it ain't broke.
There you go.
Okay, it is Friday. Cheers to the freaking weekend. Time for what we are watching, reading, and eating. Moshe, what are you watching?
So, you know how HBO Max, I think it's just Max now, they put out the episodes every week as opposed to Netflix, which just like dumps a whole season together. So that's White Lotus. So we're going to continue to watch White Lotus. We noted this week that we were not fans of the new theme song for season 3. Mike White has changed it. I was very much into season 2 theme song, but I'm going to continue to watch despite the fact that they messed with such a great theme song. I will say this weekend, if you have Paramount Plus and you're into the Yellowstone series, season 2 of 1923, the prequel series, is now out. Harrison Ford, Helen Mirren will be there as the patriarch and matriarch of the Dutton family. Jill, what are you watching?
Moshe, I might watch 0 Day. It is a political thriller starring Robert De Niro and Angela Bassett as the President of the United States. It's on Netflix.
This looked good. I saw this.
Seems
I saw
right
a promo
up my
for
alley.
this.
Yes.
All right. I'm definitely going to watch that too.
Copycat.
Jill, what are you reading? Jill, when we're not watching 0 Day, what are we reading this weekend?
Okay, so this article from the Wall Street Journal looked kind of funny. It's called When Your Last Name is Null, N-U-L-L, Nothing Works. The word used by computer scientists to mean no value has created long-running challenges, and they talked to a bunch of people whose last name is Null, like a 26-year-old attorney in Pittsburgh who said that her cousin couldn't even get her teaching license because of the last name Null.
So this is the last name N-U-L-L. Apparently, when you enter it, computer programs view it as literally nothing, zero.
She also says that she couldn't get her internet provider to cancel her account because they kept telling her that there was no last name associated with it. So she basically had to pay the company for months. Yeah. And she eventually just like switched internet providers.
Wow, I never thought about this. This is fascinating.
Kind of funny.
And I will say this, I thought I had problems with my last name, just spelling it and pronounce, Wanunu, O-I-N-O-U, difficult, right? Challenging last name. But like these are like, that's just annoying challenges. This is like serious challenges if your last name is Null. By the way, if any of you listen to this podcast in the Mo News community whose last name is Null, we want to hear from you. N-U-L-L. What struggles have you faced as a Null?
What is your life like? Barry, it's like the real life Who's On First.
No. I exist.
All right, Moshe, what are you reading?
Here's your clue. A told B and B told C. I'll meet you at the top of the coconut tree.
Chicka, chicka, boom, boom. Will there be enough room? Nailed it.
Last week, my book I was reading was Hop on Pop. We're going to go with some kids' books. I'm reading a lot to Olivia these days. And so this week I'm reading Chicka, chicka, boom, boom. We're really into it right now.
Do you have the extended version or the original?
I think I have the original. What's in the extended version?
The extended version, they climb back up the coconut tree after they fall down.
Oh, I have the extended version. We go up the tree twice.
I don't even know which is the original, but yes.
Okay.
There is a shorter one too.
Whatever version I have, we go up the tree twice, all the letters.
All right, Moshe, what are you eating?
We actually just got the flavors from Bread's Bakery of their Hamantaschen. Hamantaschen is a cookie, a traditional cookie that Jews eat for the Purim holiday, which is happening in a couple of weeks here. And I will say the black sesame Hamantaschen was delicious. Alex just put up a video over on her Instagram page, so check it out over there.
Last year, if you remember, I was at your apartment and we tried them and they were awesome. So I'm kind of jealous here.
We redid the taste test. You're several hundred miles away, so you could not partake this year. But you know who could partake this year? Olivia now has teeth and can eat solids. So big deal. So Olivia partook, and actually as a family, based on how vocally she said, yeah, we were able to get a sense of who everyone's favorite was, or which flavor everyone's favorite was. Jill, what are you eating? Or where are you trying to eat this weekend, I should say?
We are trying to get into Houston's, which is one of our favorite restaurants, Houston's or Hillstone's when we were in the city. Mm-hmm. When we were living in New York City, and I am in Boca Raton right now, and there is a Houston's here. And Moshe, I have now called like every single day to try and get a reservation. Potentially we can get, for tonight, the only time available was 3:45. So that's not tonight. That's for the afternoon.
That's
so
like
we'll see.
Yeah, that's not even early dinner. That's late lunch.
So if the weather turns, I will go to Houston's. And if not, I will keep on trying and I will call them every single day. And it's not worth going And it is
Why?
not
How-
worth wait, and it is not worth going to wait because I'm going with my kids. So if it was just me and my husband, I would just go and we would get a drink at the bar, whatever it may be. But like a 90-minute wait with a 2.5-year-old, not fun. The spinach artichoke dip is not that good.
The spinach artichoke dip and whatever is on the iPad. At that point, they get bored with the iPad.
All right, so I'll keep you guys posted on what wine.
Just read the extended edition of Chicka Chicka Boom Boom several times.
If only.
If only.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It helps us grow. Follow us and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And review us in the App Store.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.